Make game day yours. Tickets, food and drinks, stats, and streaming. Everything you need is in the Utah Mammoth app. Download today and make game night easy. Download on both Android and iPhone. Tusk Top.
The Jazz, the Mammoth, and the Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. When it comes to sports in Utah, we've got you covered. This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim LeCaux, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Scott Gerard alongside the coach, Tim LeCaux, helping us break it all down and what to expect out of this new team, new coaching staff, and soon-to-be new athletic director at Iowa State, Eugene Rapay, from the Des Moines Register and the USA Today Network. Eugene, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me on.
Well, we're trying to preview a lot of teams around the Big 12 as we get ready for the start of the season. And Iowa State is a team that kind of that first title sequence in Major League where everybody's like, who are these guys? Because there's that element of just like, hey, new coaching staff, new team, high turnover, and that's going to happen in this day and age of college athletics. What have you been able to glean from this new crew at Iowa State?
Yeah, it's a completely different kind of year, different kind of era, especially when you look at Matt Campbell in recent years. When he was still at Iowa State, they actually had the lowest transfer rate since the whole transfer portal got revamped. So for Iowa State, you go from having plenty of continuity to now welcoming 82 new players, a brand new coaching staff, and like you mentioned, a soon-to-be new AD. And there's just so much. We don't know what to fully expect. We know that based on Jimmy Rogers' pedigree and what he's done so far, they're going to be very defensive-minded. We saw some of their new standout players this spring, but a couple of them did not suit up for their spring showcase. So there are still some unknowns here, but I'm curious to see how it leans. I know that they're going to predicate a lot on physicality and defense, and I'm curious to see how the offense will hold up. But, yeah, a lot of new faces, no returning starters on either side of the ball, and so it's going to be a brand new year for Iowa State.
What are your first impressions of Jimmy Rogers, a young guy, 39 years old, played football at South Dakota State, and the year after he finished, jumped into coaching, 2010, has been at it at different places, but certainly cut his teeth as a head coach. His record of 33-9 early on, won a national championship at South Dakota State. What are your impressions of Jimmy?
He's a straight shooter. This guy is just only interested in football. He's not really interested in the pomp and circumstance and all the pageantry. This guy is just here to hopefully win games and coach up the team. But he's a guy that, you know, despite his youth and all that, he's confident in the rebuilding process. He went through something similar last year at Washington State. Took a team with very little expectations, made them 6-6, bowl eligible. They had some really close games down the wire with Ole Miss and Tulane. So they're feeling pretty confident that they can, you know, based on their experiences last year at Washington State, they can carry that over to Ames as they do another complete roster overhaul. But it's going to be a whole nother ball game as going from a weakened Pac-12 to the Big 12. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much of that will carry over and if they're able to make that transition seamlessly. So far, they seem to have a lot of players bought in, which is what you want to see during the offseason. But once the things start to get tough, once the schedule starts to kick off, and it's going to be interesting to see if is that buy-in going to maintain when things don't go well or when things aren't going as planned, or are they going to be able to navigate those problems, those obstacles seamlessly?
So the one thing that I've really been impressed with Matt Campbell is that Iowa State is a city that you would, you know, and look, you know, the same thing. I'd call games at Utah State. We're here in Utah, so we understand that the transfer portal thing can be very, very real. And his ability to hold on to players, as you mentioned, I thought was dramatic because there's places that might be a bit sexier than Ames out there. You know, again, no disrespect to Iowa. So the fact he was able to hold on to players and win at a really high level, is it the culture of Iowa State, or is there concern that was just Matt Campbell magic in a bottle and that he took it with him to Penn State?
Yeah, as someone who just got to the beat or just got to Ames approximately 3 years ago, when you hear from the players about the culture and all that, there was a part of me that thought early on, oh, this is just kind of coach speak, or this is just kind of PR training. But as I've gotten to be around Matt Campbell more and more of the players, I think there really was something to the culture that he built. And so I really think it was a little bit of A and B. I think Matt Campbell was definitely a huge driver. As we saw once he left, a bunch of those marquee players went with him to Penn State. I am curious, though. There is definitely a sense of camaraderie, the sense of community here in Ames that's different from other places that, like you mentioned, it's unique. It's small town. It's something that gives a lot of hometown pride to the people in central Iowa. But I'm curious to see are they going to be able to maintain that moving forward? We already see this massive roster overhaul. I guess we're going to need to see next year what it will be like, what the transfer rate will look like. But as of right now, I really feel like it was something that Matt Campbell was able to build over his 10 years in Ames. It didn't come easy. He found success in a spot that was not easy to recruit or maintain consistent success, and he left as the winningest coach in school history. Now you have a whole new era with Jimmy Rogers. Does that culture stay? Did some of it remain, or did all of it go with Matt Campbell to Happy Valley?
So what have you gleaned about how the style, the schemes, how Jimmy will play on the offensive side and the defensive side?
On the defensive side, they're going to switch to a four-man front, which we know John Haycock's 3-3-5. While it had a time and place and had success, one thing that Iowa State fans were clamoring for was more pressure on opposing quarterbacks, more sacks. And over the last couple of years, Iowa State was on the bottom of the conference when it came to creating sacks. So I think that four-man front is looking to change things up. They're bringing in Isaac Terrell, who led Washington State in sacks last season and was the Pac-12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. So I think that already is providing more excitement for Iowa State fans to just see, will this four-man front make a difference? Is there going to be more pressure? Is there going to be more physicality up front than what we've seen the last couple of years? And then on the offensive side of the ball, they're looking to be very run-heavy. They're looking to run it down. Tyler Roll is the offensive coordinator. He was in Ames 2 years ago as a running backs coach, went to the NFL for 1 year with the Detroit Lions. Now he's back as the OC. He wants to just run it down opposing teams' throat. For Iowa State, they're just going to keep it steady, predicate everything on physicality on both sides of the ball. And then for offense, they're going to mix in some play action or whatever it may be. They got Jalen Rayner, who is a dual threat quarterback, an experienced player from Arkansas State, 3-year starter. So they feel pretty good about what they have on the offensive front. But when you have a lot of players who are D2 level or FCS, how much of that will culminate as they make the jump to the Power Conference?
Yeah, Isaac Terrell has called all of his games of his brother who played tight end up at Utah State. He's a Lehigh grad here locally, and I know he's a dominant force. It'll be fun to see what he can do at the Big 12 level, getting after the quarterback. But, the thing that I look at in this day and age of college athletics, it all really comes down to money and in building a roster. Is the alumni base such at Iowa State that they can stay competitive in the Big 12? They don't need to lead the Big 12, but are they competitive in terms of NIL in the Big 12?
I think that they've gotten better with it in the last couple of years. I think that they've been catching up slowly and gradually with the times. I know that there has been more football money this year than years past, so it seems like they're trying to invest more into it. But in terms of the big cachet, I think that Iowa State is probably still behind or middle of the pack. Will it be enough? I don't know. I think Matt Campbell was a great negotiator in getting players to stay and invest, even if it meant taking a pay cut on their front. So I don't know if Jimmy Rogers will have that same charisma or have that same kind of pull with his players. But I think that it did really go a long way when you have Matt Campbell able to retain these guys despite knowing they could go to the transfer portal, go to a Big Ten school, SEC school, make way more money, and they still chose to stay in Ames. So a lot of that really went to the culture. So there's really a lot of unknowns here moving forward as Jimmy Rogers takes his first step into the Big 12 and Iowa State.
While the conference didn't do a preseason poll, there's been a lot of, amateurs out there trying it in different ways. But what do you anticipate as far as a win total for Iowa State this year?
I think the best case scenario will be bowl eligibility, 6 wins. And I think the floor is probably at 3-4 wins. I think it's going to be an uphill battle. I think there's something that needs to be said that, Iowa State last year had an 8-win team despite being injury riddled and all that. And now you bring in a roster where a lot of the players are from the D2 FCS level. It's going to be a huge jump. just looking at the offensive line from what I saw in the spring, they look kind of small, undersized. So I'm curious, they look good against each other, but what will happen when you're up against a Texas Tech, or if you're up against a BYU, or if you're up against these very physical Big 12 teams? So I think that for Iowa State, best case scenario will be bowl eligibility, and that might mean a lot of things going right. But I think it'll be more so a 3-4 win season for them.
I've always been a huge fan of your athletic director out there, Jamie Pollard. And I was a huge fan when he just flat out said, you know what, SEC, Big Ten, you want to leave, just leave. We're done. He's stepping down. Those are big shoes to fill. He's been there quite some time. I know that's going to be a heavy, sought-after job, but what are the early steps and what are the, ETA, the time process in trying to fill that void?
Yeah, he's been there for 20 years, has helped that athletic department change so much, especially with their recent success in recent years. I know that what they're hoping is to have a new AD in place by the end of the football season, but the search for itself probably won't start until next month, probably next month. And they're hoping to have his successor named by basketball season. So it's going to be a very interesting process. I'm curious to see which way Iowa State can go. You can go many ways with it. Do you go with a savvy businessman? Do you go with someone with Midwest roots who knows what it's like in that area? There's lots of different ways that they can cut it up, and it's going to be a very interesting search for sure.
Could they go internal? Are there strong internal candidates, or do they essentially want to go outside and bring somebody in with a fresh voice?
There are a couple of strong candidates, I think, that are internal. I'm just curious to see if they would want that job, or if they're looking, because they're also pretty close to retirement age too. So I'm curious to see if they actually put their hat if they throw their hat in the ring, or if they look elsewhere.
As you look at the Big 12, obviously we're here in Salt Lake. What do you anticipate from what you've seen of both BYU and Utah?
I think both teams should be pretty good. I look at BYU and Bear Bachmeier and what they've been able to do. Kalani Sitake is now the elder statesman of the Big 12, is the longest tenured coach. They've always impressed me, and Utah, I think, is going to be having a little bit of a comeback year, or a step up from last season, with a new era there with Morgan Scalley. So I am very excited. I think that both teams, whenever Iowa State did face them in these last couple of years, it was always just an all-out war. So I'm excited to see what those two are going to bring this season.
If you were to, considering the Sorsby situation at Texas Tech and knowing their quarterback situation, would you still have them number one, or would you have somebody else as your preseason pick to win the conference?
I'm a believer that they're still number one until they actually get knocked off, but I think that gap between them and BYU is definitely shortened a little bit. The Big 12, as we've seen in the last couple of years, it really is hard to predict. I know, like you guys mentioned, lots of amateurs have tried to predict the order of finish, and it seems like every year there's always a surprise or two. So I don't think that Texas Tech has as strong of a hold as they did last season, and I think BYU coming up should give them a pretty good run for their money.
How is with the teardown? I mean, it might be one of the biggest teardowns in college football history, as you mentioned, the number of guys that left. How are the fans? How is the morale there because it really was a healthy football situation? Sure, they want to continue that. Is there an anticipation there to kind of see what this looks like?
There's both a curiosity, a healthy curiosity where, there's still the excitement of the unknown. Like, let's get behind the guys who stayed, the 40 or so players who stayed, 21 scholarship players from last season who stayed, the support Jimmy Rogers in his first year in Ames. But then there's also the other side that I think is a little bit louder, where there's a lot more skepticism, a lot more doubt, a lot more uncertainty whether or not fans want to renew their season tickets or not, just based on what I've seen from social media and some of the fans that I've spoken to in person. So I think there's both sides of the spectrum there. I do think that it'll lean towards excitement early on, but if things get rough or things get tough for Iowa State, I think that fan support is going to drop off big time.
Well, Eugene, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Look forward to catching up with you again down the line. Football can't get here fast enough, man. Let's get this thing going.
Oh, I know. It'll be here before we know it. And thank you guys for having me on.
You got it. Eugene Rapay, Des Moines Register, and the USA Today Network right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.